Welcome to this Tutor to You AQA A-Level Sociology Paper 2 walkthrough for global development. In this video we're going to look at the 10-mark apply and analyse questions, focusing on the role of non-governmental organisations or NGOs. Now the 10-mark apply and analyse questions appear on all three papers and make up 40 out of 240 marks that are available, so it is essential that students maximise their marks on this question in order to get good grades. The question is presented with an item from which students must take two hooks from the item to help them to answer the question. They would have two extended paragraphs that they write, each referring to a hook and developing that hook into a reason or an explanation for why something has occurred. In order to get into the top levels of the mark band on this question, students are required to analyse and or evaluate the explanation offered. Now this means that they can do some in-depth analysis of each of the two reasons. They could do less analysis and some evaluation of one reason and deeper analysis of another, or they can do analysis and evaluation of both reasons to get into that top mark band. Now we're going to look at a sample question in this video, and this has been written by Tutor to You for the purposes of this video. It does mirror the style of questions that appear on AQA A-Level Sociology Paper 2. It has an item and a question. It says, Item K, non-governmental organisations, NGOs, often work in local communities to provide education, healthcare and humanitarian aid. They are seen by some as more flexible and responsive than large international agencies. Sociologists suggest that NGOs play an important role in development. And the question asks students to apply material from item K and analyse two reasons why NGOs play an important role in development. Now you'd be right to notice that the second paragraph in the item repeats the question. It says sociologists suggest that NGOs play an important role in development, and the question is asking you to analyse two reasons why NGOs play an important role in development. Hooks from that line would not be credited. You need to take your hooks from something that is not already centred on the question. So let's have a look at what we've chosen as the hooks from this item. Now I've chosen work in local communities, which is an advantage of non-governmental organisations. They are seen as being more people-centred and they utilise expertise in local communities to work directly to help a local community. And the other one is more flexible and responsive than large international agencies. NGOs generally are able to get feet on the ground in response to, for example, humanitarian crises very rapidly, certainly more quickly than large international agencies such as the IMF or the World Bank. And so these are two ways in which NGOs do play an important role in development. You could have alternatively focused on education, healthcare or humanitarian aid. However, I've focused on working in local communities and more flexible and responsive as my two reasons that NGOs are playing an important role in development, and I need to develop those. Now in this question we need to link the cause to the effect. So in this instance, how are NGOs going to impact on development? And so we can look at it using our two hooks. Our first one was work in local communities. Why is that an advantage? Why is that useful in the role of development? Well, it means that NGOs are more likely to be in touch with local needs and needs of the population. This is seen as being a form of empowerment for those people because they're involved in solving their own problems with assistance from an NGO. And this can align with post-development theory, so the theories of the likes of Escobar and people-centered development. Our other hook is that NGOs are more flexible and quick to respond. They are more mobile than international governmental organisations and states. Why is this a benefit to development? Well, we can use examples of how different NGOs have supported natural disasters, for example, and linking this into humanitarian aid. And we can then back that up by supporting it from a neoliberal viewpoint, how they believe that the third sector, or NGOs, are really important to reduce state spending and to actually provide direct and targeted assistance towards certain communities, and this helps the process of development. So let's look at an example. One reason NGOs play an important role in development is because of their local grassroots focus. As item K states, NGOs work in local communities to provide essential services like education and healthcare. So we've got our item hook in straight away. We've also mentioned our reason. Their local grassroots focus is an important role in development, but now we need to explain why it is important in development. This community-based approach means that NGOs are often more in touch with local needs, especially in rural or marginalised areas that large organisations might overlook. And this is particularly the case when we look at international governmental organisations. So any aid that is given from, say, for example, the IMF or the World Bank tends to be on large projects. So the World Bank tends to look at large infrastructure projects rather than the needs of people in rural areas of the developing world. For example, NGOs such as WaterAid in sub-Saharan Africa have helped deliver clean water and basic education by involving local people in planning and decision making. Now, if you're struggling to find a specific piece of research for NGOs, it is useful to use examples of where NGOs have intervened. This is supported by post-development theorists such as Escobar, so we're getting a theoretical viewpoint in here, who argue that small-scale community-led development is more sustainable and culturally appropriate than top-down intervention. NGOs are therefore seen as empowering local populations rather than imposing Western solutions. Now, we can also evaluate this. So because while some sociologists will suggest that NGOs are empowering, others will see them through a more critical lens. And we can develop this point by talking about this. However, not all NGOs adopt these type of practices, and critics, including Sachs, suggest that NGOs often unintentionally promote Western lifestyle ideals as universal goals, such as promoting individualism. We could have talked about promoting gender equality and how that imposes upon traditional views within a country as well, particularly when it comes to education and how that could potentially cause conflict. NGOs can potentially cause conflict by focusing on a specific group or challenging cultural norms that exist in the developing world. So you can see here the students gone down the route of analysis and evaluation to try and give a good response here, and they've pretty much succeeded. Their second paragraph, a second reason NGOs are important is their flexibility and ability to respond quickly to crises, as noted in item K. They've developed this by talking about contrast with slow-moving international bodies like the IMF or the World Bank, and how NGOs can deliver rapid humanitarian aid in emergencies such as earthquakes, famines, or conflict zones. Again, there is a link to specific examples. So the Red Cross, Oxfam, and Médecins Sans Frontières are well known for their immediate responses to natural disasters and refugee crises. And then the student has developed their analysis by talking about how neoliberal perspectives would view NGOs, suggesting that NGOs represent an alternative to state-run development, suggesting that smaller, non-state actors are often more efficient, accountable and adaptable than large bureaucratic institutions. They've gone on to talk about other impacts, so NGOs can attract targeted funding and volunteers, and often face less corruption than government-run programs in the global south. Again, we could have stopped there with analysis. The students also introduced some evaluation here using dependency theory to criticize neoliberal perspectives on NGOs. So it's very specific to what dependency theorists think about NGOs. NGOs can unintentionally reinforce dependency. By filling the gaps left by weak governments, NGOs may prevent local states from developing their own infrastructure. And of course, this builds into this idea that dependency theorists put forward that the Western world wants to keep the developing nations in a state of dependency because they are then able to exploit them, what they see as being a form of neo-colonialism. That concludes this Tutor to You AQA A-Level Sociology Paper 2 walkthrough for global development, looking at 10 mark apply and analyse questions on the role of NGOs. Thanks for watching.